All right, Chapter 7. In this chapter, we'll basically look at operations with polynomials. So you've already probably learned how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers. Now we're going to spend some time talking about how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide polynomials. All right, so let's start with the easier operations, addition and subtraction. The nice thing about adding polynomials is you pretty much already know how to do it. The way you add polynomials is just by combining like terms. So, for example here, we're supposed to add 4x squared plus 3x minus 7 to x squared minus 4x plus 3. Again, if you don't see a coefficient here, I recommend, particularly if you're learning this for the first time, that you go ahead and put a 1 in there. All right, so first we look at x squareds. 4x squared plus 1x squared is 5x squared. That takes care of this and this. Positive 3x minus 4x is minus 1x. Again, 3 minus 4 is 3 plus negative 4, or negative 1. And finally, negative 7 added to positive 3 is negative 4. That takes care of this and this. So it's simply 5x squared minus x minus 4. Again, not really any different than what we were doing just in the previous chapter.
And if students wonder about those parentheses, since there's no coefficient in front of the parenthesis, you can just drop them and combine like terms.
That's right. Some of the textbooks write these problems in parentheses. Sometimes they don't. We went ahead and used the parentheses here since a lot of times the problems are written in this form. But as far as addition is concerned, the parentheses don't really matter. If you wanted to, you could just drop them in the first place and rewrite the problem. All right, let's look at a second example of this. Here, again, we're still interested in writing our answer from largest exponent down to smallest exponent. So I look first at this, and I notice the largest exponent is x cubed, and there are no other x cubes over here. So the first part of my answer is just 7x cubed. Now I'm looking for x squareds, and there's only this one x squared here. So all I have here is plus 2x squared. Now I'm looking for x's. I have negative 1x and negative 5x here. Negative 1 plus negative 5 is negative 6x. That takes care of this and this. And finally, positive 4 added to negative 10 is negative 6. Again, you can still go back and think in terms of money if that helps you. If you owe one person an x and you owe somebody else 5 x's, you owe a total of 6 x's. If you have $4 but you owe somebody $10, you're still behind by $6. I recommend still thinking about it that way if it helps. All right, so much for addition. You pretty much already know how to do it. So let's take a look at subtraction. For subtraction, we're basically still following the rule that we used when we subtract numbers. We rewrite the problem as an addition problem, and in this case, we change the signs of all of the expression in the second parentheses. So to rewrite this in terms of an addition problem, this is x squared minus 6x minus 7. I didn't change anything here. Change this to an addition sign and change all the signs here. Negative 5x squared plus 2x minus 3. The first signs stay the same. The subtraction sign changes to an addition sign. Each of these signs in this parenthesis changes. This is positive, it becomes negative. This is negative, it becomes positive. This is positive, it becomes negative. Once you've done that, though, you're back to just combining like terms again. So I'm looking for all my x squareds. Here's 1x squared, and here's negative 5x squared. Negative 5 plus 1 gives me negative 4x squared. Now I'm looking for x's. Here's a negative 6x and a positive 2x. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4x. And finally, I'm looking for constants. Here's a negative 7. Here's a negative 3. Negative 7 plus negative 3 is negative 10. So the final answer is negative 4x squared minus 4x minus 10. If you don't want to write all of this out, you could also just change the signs up here. So let's go ahead and do that in this next example. It's just a little bit shorter. All right, so 4x squared minus 2x minus 3x cubed minus 2x plus 4. So change this to a plus sign. This is positive, I'll make it negative. This is negative, I'll make it positive. This is positive, I'll make it negative. Now when you do this, you may sometimes forget which is the original sign and which is the changed sign. So what I usually recommend students do is put a circle around the new sign.
This is where I tell my students, Bill, to use two different colors. Use a pen or a pencil, or something, different colored pencils themselves, and that'll help you see the change in size.
That'll also help you see. That's a very good way to do it too. Again, the more visual stuff you can get into this, often the easier it is for people. All right, again, we're still looking for largest exponent down to smallest exponent. This is the only x cubed I see, so my answer starts with negative 3x cubed. That takes care of this. This is the only x squared I see, so that's plus 4x squared. I should mention, since I haven't, that if you don't see a sign in front of a term, it's understood that that term is positive. So that's why this is plus 4x squared. Now I'm looking for x's. Negative 2x added to positive 2x is just 0. In particular, you don't write 0x, you just leave that term out altogether. And then finally, there's a negative 4 left over here, so the final piece over here is negative 4. And so that's the final answer, negative 3x cubed plus 4x squared minus 4. And pretty much that's all there is to addition and subtraction.
Yes, it is. And that is one of the key components. One of these questions will be on your exit test.
Yes, there's always either an addition or a subtraction problem on the exit test. So this is a couple of points right there.
That's it.
All right, that takes care of addition and subtraction. Now let's talk about multiplying polynomials. Let's look at a problem that's pretty similar to stuff that we've already done in an earlier chapter. Here's the polynomial 4x multiplied by 3x minus 6. Again, everything on the outside gets multiplied by everything on the inside. So 4x gets multiplied by 3x, then 4x gets multiplied by negative 6. If you're learning this for the first time, you may want to actually write that step out. 4x gets multiplied by 3x minus 4x gets multiplied by 6. And again, in doing this multiplication, do numbers, then variables. 4 times 3 is 12. X to the first power times x to the first power is x to the 1 plus 1, or second power, minus 4x multiplied by 6 is 24x. Notice that even though there's no x multiplied by this, it still gets carried down as part of your answer. So the final answer here is 12x squared minus 24x. All right, let's continue. Again, here, this is negative 5x squared times 2x squared, negative 5x squared times negative 4x, and negative 5x squared times positive 1. Again, notice I'm treating this sign as if it's connected to the 4 and this sign as if it's connected to the 1. So it's negative 5x squared times this piece, negative 5x squared times this piece, and negative 5x squared times this piece. I I think if you think about it that way, you'll find it a little easier to keep track of the pieces. Again, just multiply numbers, then multiply variables. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. 2 plus 2 gives me x to the 4th power. Negative 5 times negative 4 is positive 20. X squared times x to the 1st power is x to the 2 plus 1, or 3rd power. And finally, negative 5x squared times 1 is just negative 5x squared, because anything multiplied by 1 is just whatever you start with. All right. Let's look at ones that are a little more difficult. Let's look at multiplying two binomials. Chances are, if you remember anything from high school algebra, you may remember a shortcut way to do this. We're going to show you two ways to do this, and you can do it whichever way seems easier to you. First, this is the way we'd recommend doing it based on what we've just shown you so far. In this case, we have 3x minus 1 times 2x plus 4. That's 3x multiplied by the second thing, 2x plus 4, and minus 1 multiplied by the second thing, 2x plus 4. Again, this piece multiplied by the second thing, and then this piece multiplied by the second thing. The 3 times 2 is 6. X to the first times x to the first is x to the 1 plus 1 power. 3x times positive 4 is positive 12x. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. And finally, negative 1 times positive 4 is negative 4. And finally, I can combine some like terms. I have an x term here and an x term here. So finally, if you have 12 x's and I take away 2 of them, you would still have 10 x's left over. So the final answer is 6x squared plus 10x minus 4. All right, Jerry, let's talk about the other way to do this.
The FOIL.
Yeah, the FOIL method. So most of you may remember this mnemonic, FOIL. And FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, and last.
Yeah, I remember first, outer, inner, last.
Really, first, outer, inner, last. All
Go
right, some of
figure.
you may remember first, outer, inner, last. Really doesn't make that much difference. The idea is the same. So let's go ahead and redo this problem that way. The first tells us to multiply the first thing by the first thing. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Outside or outer tells you to multiply this term by this term. These are the outside terms. 3x times positive 4 is positive 12x. Inside or inner term says to multiply this term by this term. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. And finally, multiply the last term, negative 1, by the last term, positive 4, giving you negative 4. You'll notice what I have written here is exactly what we have written here. Really, these two methods are equivalent to each other. They're not really that different. But I find some students find this a little bit easier because we write the steps out. In any case, I would do the same thing to finish off here. Add the 12x to the negative 2x, getting 6x squared plus 10x minus 4. So again, pick whichever method seems easiest to you.
And tilt your head when you look at your writing.
Yeah, I'm really running out of room a little bit over here. That would be a good reason to go to another slide. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's look at this problem. Again, this problem is a little bit longer, but we're going to do it exactly the same way. Don't try to do too many steps at once. Just take it piece by piece. All right, so x minus 3 times 2x squared plus 6x minus 1. That's x times 2x squared plus 6x minus 1 minus 3 times 2x squared plus 6x minus 1. All right, so we'll just multiply piece by piece. 1x times 2x squared, 1 times 2 is 2. X to the first power times x squared is x to the 1 plus 2 power. 1 times positive 6 is positive 6. X to the first times x to the first is x squared. 1x times negative 1 is minus 1x. Over here, negative 3 times 2x squared is negative 6x squared. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Carry along the x. Negative 3 times positive 6x is negative 18x. Again, the negative 3 times positive 6 is negative 18. Just carry the x along. And finally, negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. All right, so we finished all the multiplying we have to do. Now all we have to do is combine like terms. So let's do it. My highest exponent is here, and I don't see any other x cubes. So this is 2x cubed. There's a positive 6x squared here and a negative 6x squared. Positive 6x squared and negative 6x squared is 0. Negative 1x plus negative 18x is negative 19x. And finally, there's a plus 3 on the end. So the final answer to this one is 2x cubed minus 19x plus 3. Let's look at an exponent with a polynomial. Now, Jerry, what's the most common wrong answer we're going to see here?
Most common wrong answer is 25x squared plus 16.
That's right. There's a tendency here to think you can just raise 5x to the second power and 4 to the second power, but unfortunately you can't. You have to remember the definition of what an exponent means. 5x minus 4 squared just means multiply two 5x minus 4s together. And now I do this problem the way we did the problem 2 slides ago. This is 5x times 5x minus 4 and negative 4 times 5x minus 4. 5 times 5 is 25. X times x is x squared. 5x times negative 4 is negative 20x. Negative 4 times 5x is another negative 20x. And finally, negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So the correct answer is 25x squared. Negative 20 and negative 20 is negative 40x plus 16. Of course, you could also have done this problem by foiling it if that's what you prefer. I think that about does it for multiplication, Jerry.
I think we've covered multiplication.
All right, finally, let's finish this chapter by taking a look at dividing polynomials. The first type of problem is dividing a polynomial by a monomial. Let's take a look at how it's done. So here we see the problem 10x cubed minus 15x squared plus 20x divided by 5x. These problems are easy as long as you remember one thing. Each term in the top of the fraction gets divided by the bottom of the fraction. In fact, that's our first step. So this problem is the same as 10x cubed divided by 5x minus 15x squared divided by 5x plus 20x divided by 5x. And then we'll just do each problem separately. Here, 5 goes into 10 twice, so that's 2. And when I divide the x's, I subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 gives me x squared minus 5 goes into 15 3 times. When I subtract the exponents here, 2 minus 1 gives me x to the first power, or just x. And finally, 5 goes into 20 4 times. And an x in the top and an x in the bottom, well, those are identical, so I can just cancel them. So this is the final answer here, 2x squared minus 3x plus 4. Finally, let's take a look at some problems that involve polynomial long division. These problems are not too bad as long as you remember just a few things. A lot of times students have trouble with these problems because they're not exactly sure where to start. So we're going to try to emphasize making sure you know how to start these problems, and then hopefully everything else will just flow naturally. All right, so let's look at this problem here. This is x plus 1 divided into x squared minus 5x minus 6. So I'm going to write this the same way I would write a long division problem with numbers. The bottom, x plus 1 divided into x squared minus 5x minus 6. Now just look at the first term here and the first term here. The question you ask yourself is, what would I have to multiply x by to get x squared? Hopefully you know the answer to that is x. What I'm going to write here is just this x multiplied by this x plus 1. X times x gives me x squared. X times positive 1 gives me positive x. Now, at this point, I want to subtract, but in my experience, students often run into some problems here. So what I'm going to recommend you do is pretty much the same thing we've done with subtraction all along. I recommend that you change the signs and add. Down here, this is positive and this is positive. So I change this sign to negative, and to remind myself that I already changed the sign, I draw a circle around it, and I change this sign to negative. To remind myself that I already did that, I draw a circle around it. And now I add x squared and negative x squared is 0. Negative 5x and negative 1x is negative 6x. And now bring down the minus 6.
You know, Bill, back in the days when they started learning long division, that's the exact operation that they did. They subtracted. And a lot of students forget that from their elementary school days.
Right. It may be so long since you've done long division, you probably haven't thought about this in a while. But we hope that after you look at, I think, the 3 examples that we're going to do, you'll be in a position to try this out yourself. All right, again, I just look here at the first piece and the first piece here. I ask myself, what would I multiply x by to get negative 6x? The answer is minus 6. So now I multiply this minus 6 by the thing I'm dividing by, x plus 1. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. Negative 6 times positive 1 is negative 6. Change the signs.
Absolutely.
So the negative sign becomes positive. This negative sign becomes positive. And negative 6x and positive 6x is 0. Negative 6 and positive 6 is 0. So this particular problem has no remainder. The answer is just x minus 6. All right, we realize that a lot of you find this difficult, so let's go ahead and look at another example. All right, this time we're looking at x minus 2 into x squared minus 3x minus 7. And this one will have a remainder so that we make sure that you know how to deal with remainders. Again, I'm going to rewrite this as a long division problem. X minus 2 into x squared minus 3x minus 7. So I ask myself, what do I multiply x by to get x squared? The answer again is x. So here I want to write whatever x multiplied by x minus 2 is. X times x is x squared. x times negative 2 is negative 2x. Change the signs. This is positive, so I change it to negative. This is negative, so I change it to positive. Now, positive x squared and negative x squared is 0. That's good. Negative 3x plus 2 is negative 1x. And now I bring down the negative 7. All right, so now the question is, what do I multiply x by to get negative 1x? The answer, as I hope you know, is negative 1. So now I multiply this negative 1 by this x minus 2. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 2, is positive 2. Again, don't forget to change the signs. So this negative becomes positive. This positive becomes negative. So negative 1 and positive 1x is 0, but negative 7 added to negative 2 is negative 9. That's our remainder. And one of the strange things about polynomial division is that the remainder can be a negative number as well as being a positive number. When you do long division with numbers, your remainder is always positive. So here, my answer is x minus 1. And I write the remainder as a fraction the same way I would if I were doing long division with numbers. So I add the remainder, negative 9, divided by x minus 2. And so this is the final answer. It's worth mentioning you could also write this just as x minus 1 minus 9 over x minus 2. It's actually acceptable either way. Most teachers won't care. All right, I think we have one more, right, Jerry?
One more tough one, Bill.
All right, let's look at one that's even a little bit more difficult than this. In particular, it's a little bit longer.
Yeah, just longer.
All
A
right.
lot tougher.
Okay, so again, let's just go ahead and write this as a long division problem. X minus 1 divided into 4x cubed minus 2x squared plus x minus 4. It's worth mentioning, notice that this polynomial is in decreasing order of powers. Occasionally they'll give you a problem where the polynomial is not already in order from largest exponent to smallest exponent, and if it's not, you need to rearrange it in that order or you're liable to get stuck and make some mistakes. So make sure the problem has the exponents in order from largest to smallest before you start dividing. All right, to get 4x cubed from x, I would have to multiply it by a 4 and also by an x squared, so that x squared times x would give me x cubed. I'll write a little bit less this time. So 4x squared times the x gives me 4x cubed. 4x squared times negative 1 gives me negative 4x squared. Change the signs. This is positive, so I change it to negative. This is negative, so I change it to positive. 4x cubed and negative 4x cubed is 0. Positive 4 minus 2 is positive 2x squared. And now I'll bring down the plus x. Now I ask myself, what do I multiply x by to get 2x squared? I want positive 2x squared, so I need to multiply by positive 2x. The 2 gives me a 2. The x times this x gives me the x squared. So positive 2x times x is positive 2x squared. Positive 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. Change the signs. This is positive, it'll become negative. This is negative, it'll become positive. 2x squared and negative 2x squared is 0. Good, that's what we want. Positive x and positive 2x is positive 3x. Finally, bring down the minus 4. Finally, if I have x, but I would like to have 3x, I would have to multiply x by positive 3. So positive 3 times x is positive 3x. Positive 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Change the signs. So this positive becomes negative. This negative becomes positive. 3x and negative 3x is 0. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. That's my remainder. So the answer to this division problem is 4x squared plus 2x plus 3 plus negative 1 over x minus 1. And that's the final answer. If you can do that one, you can probably do any of the long division problems that you'll see, at least in this course. Did I miss anything, Jared?
Not a bit.
All right, Jared and I would like to point out that you've just completed Chapter 7, which means you are halfway through this course. There's only 7 more chapters to go.
That's right.
Good work. We'll see you in Chapter 8.